Hey, Dana. Come on in.
What's going on, sir? I'm
Good to
waiting.
see you. That's okay.
It's been a long
I think
day.
you know that girl right there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about animal chiropractic tonight, and I want to talk about how I got into this and why I got into it. And that happened actually probably about 2003 or 2004. And I just satellite practice I used to go to in O'Neill. And I had some friends that I'd stop and see on the way up there. And so on the way back, it was summer, I stopped to see them, and the woman who owned the farm, the wife, said, "Hey, we've got a cow down in the pasture, and I was wondering if you could go take a look at this cow." It was a steer, actually. It was a steer. And I said, "Sure." Now, you have to understand, I never adjusted an animal before in my life. And I was pretty intimidated, if you want to know the truth. And so I got my laser, and we got on the four-wheel, drove way out in the pasture, and this steer was down on all fours. And Debbie told me that the vet told them that this animal was going to die, and it'd have to be rendered, and they better prepare for that because it had some neurological issue. And they said, I don't know exactly what it is. I can't fix it. I just know this animal's going to die by tomorrow. That's what they told her. Mm-hmm. So she was desperate enough to bring me out there. And so I got on the four-wheel. We went out there. Now, I don't know if some of you've been around farm animals, haven't you?
Yeah, I was born on the farm.
Yeah. So you just don't walk up to a steer, right? I mean, they'll run, or they're not like pets.
You gotta go slow.
Yeah. So I walked up to this animal, and it didn't even flinch. I mean, it was on all fours. And I touched it, and so I evaluated it using what's called surrogate muscle testing, and I won't go into what that is, but I found out that the upper bone in its neck was out on the right side. And so it was just sitting there. So I just put my wrist up, my piezoform up against the atlas and the animal, and I leaned back, and I just went boom, and I felt this clunk, okay, and I knew I'd gotten it. I knew it, and so then I lasered it in the brain, lasered it around the neck, and I that was all I could do. That's all I knew to do. So a few days later, I got a call and said that the steer, the next day, the steer was up walking around like nothing happened. And eventually they butchered it, and I got some of the meat, and I was happy about that.
T-bones, here they come.
Yeah. So anyway, here's what I realized. Number one is that animals need chiropractic, and they can respond to chiropractic as well as anything. Number two thing I found out is that just because a vet says an animal has to be put down doesn't mean it has to be put down.
Right.
In other words, what I realized is that you can save a lot of animals from being put down with chiropractic, and Cindy will have an interesting story to tell about Pixie here in a little bit. So that's how I got started. Now, it wasn't like I adjusted that steer and then all of a sudden I adjusted all these animals for all these years. I mean, I went for a long time and I didn't adjust another animal. And now, that was before they had a law. Now they have a law that we have to be certified and all of that, and that's what all this stuff right here is for. And so we're going to talk about just natural health care for animals, and what does that entail, and what is it? Why do we need natural health care for animals? For example, animals, they require a lot of the same things a human needs to stay healthy. They need proper nutrition, a properly functioning nervous system. Their organs need to move right and work right. And if they don't have this, they're going to get sick. Let's talk about dog food for just a second. The best dog food out there is sold at Costco. It's called Nature's Domain Salmon and Sweet Potato. And the salmon is actually a wild-caught salmon, and very high in protein and minerals, very low in plant lectins. Now, if you look at most dog and cat treats, a lot of artificial stuff in there. And we'll look at a little bit of that. But here's what plant lectins do. They cause leaky gut in animals. They'll just tear up the gut of an animal. They'll cause allergies. And they diminish the quality of the fur. So this is a very low lectin containing food, okay? What to avoid in animal food? Well, it's basically very similar to human food. You avoid sugar. Animals weren't designed to eat sugar. Cheap cereal grains. You know, animals aren't supposed to be eating like Cheerios, you know, for the first meal of the day. Meat byproducts. Some of these meat byproducts are completely indigestible. Glutens. Your animals can develop allergies to gluten, just like humans can. Artificial colors and flavors. I mean, they don't need these. I mean, you know, when a mountain lion kills a deer, you know, it isn't full of artificial, you know, flavors and colors. And chemical preservatives, okay? None of that you want in animal food. And when I was working on my certification and I was looking at some of the treats that were being fed to these animals, I mean, I wouldn't eat that stuff, and I wouldn't want my animals to eat it. You know, and I told one of the owners, the pet owners, that I you know, stop giving her animal this stuff. There's a product, and the reason I don't carry this is because you have to buy 24 bottles of this, and it'd probably take me till I'm 90 to sell it all. But this is really, really good for animals that have eaten a lot of processed food, that have developed allergies and have poor quality fur. It's a lectin scavenger. Okay? And I was going to buy some of that, but you had to buy 24 of them, and that's just way too many for me to carry. So I'm going to try and find out how I can get fewer than that. But cats should only eat wet food, never dry. You should never feed cats dry food.
How come is that?
Look at their teeth. They have these those really sharp teeth that's designed for tearing meat.
Up.
Yeah. Cats should never eat dry food.
Is that the same way with the dog too?
Dogs are a little different. You know, they can have more of a combination of the two. They definitely need some animal protein, but they can eat. It's not as quite as hard and fast as cats.
Okay.
If you look at lectins, high lectin foods, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but legumes, grain and animal foods, you know, gluten and wheat are very high in lectins. Oats. You know, some of the grain-fed animal foods, nuts, seeds, and oils have high lectins, and not everybody reacts to lectins in the same way. I don't have a serious issue with them, but a lot of people do. Low lectin food. Then there's low lectin foods like coconut, chestnut, macadamia nuts. Certain fruits and vegetables are very low in lectins. Nightshades are pretty high in lectins, like peppers, cucumbers, corn, pumpkin, squash, zucchini, tomatoes. A lot of that stuff I really like. Can be very high in lectins. So you just have to be careful. But these high lectin foods certainly don't belong in animal food, that's for sure. The most important aspect of natural health care for animals is correcting the vertebral subluxation. And here you see a vertebra and a pinched nerve right there. Chiropractors define the subluxation as a functional misalignment of a vertebra, limiting the mobility of a joint and causing pressure on the surrounding nerves. If a subluxation exists in an animal, one of the things you notice is that they won't be as flexible as normal. They lose flexibility, they lose performance, and they have a lot of muscular tension. And you really see this in horses a lot. You reduce the mobility between two vertebrae, and the nerves that leave that area, it can be affected significantly, and that can cause changes in the function of the tissue or the health of the tissue innervated by those nerves. So it can manifest anywhere in the spine, cause neurological deficit, and cause somatovisceral disease, which means disease of the internal organs as a result of that. And I'll show you how that works and what those are. When an animal is given a spinal adjustment, the neurological short circuit is restored back to the on position so the normal nerve flow can be restored. And it's just like a human being. It's exactly, except that animals I think they tend to respond a little faster. Animals are like, they're either on or off, you know. I mean, they're either well or they're not. They don't think, well, I think I might be a little better, you know. There's none of that, you know. Now, what I use is veterinary orthopedic manipulation, very low force technique with an instrument, which makes it literally impossible to hurt the animal. And how do we determine a subluxation in an animal? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. But basically, we run the instrument up the spine of the animal, and when you hit a subluxation, the animal will just jerk. Okay, it doesn't hurt the animal, but they have this response where they just
Like to be in shock?
well, not quite that bad.
Something like that, smile.
But they twitch, the skin twitches, the muscle twitches, and after a while you can really tell pretty easily what happens. So muscle reads appear as muscle and skin movements after the thrust. And so the treatment and the diagnosis are very similar. And so when you adjust an animal, what happens is once you start clearing out subluxations, like they'll yawn, the horses will start smacking their lips. Dogs just sort of melt down a little bit. They get really relaxed. And they what they might fear at first, they find out later that it feels pretty good and they like it. So here's some typical canine cases that resolve really well with animal chiropractic. Acute disc disease that doesn't involve paralysis. Dogs that can't move their neck very well, and diseases of the legs like limping, things like that, whether it's chronic or acute. Shifting foreleg lameness, where they just kind of shift back and forth when they walk. Rear leg lameness, degenerative myelopathy, which is just a degeneration of the spine. Canine wobbler's disease, and hip dysplasia. Now, cats can develop this thing called wry neck, where they can't move their head out of this position. That responds really well to VOM. And with cats, what I'm finding is that you don't have to go all the way up and down the spine. Usually, most of what you find in a cat's going to be in the neck, almost always. Cats, lameness, lack of leg strength, and then somatovisceral diseases respond really well in cats. Here's some things to avoid after you've adjusted a small animal. First of all, they don't need cage rest. They need to be taken out and go to the bathroom. They need to be moving. You need to avoid them going up and down stairs, jumping off couches and beds. This is how animals get subluxated, by the way. And jumping in and out of car seats, especially from the front seat to the back seat, not a good thing for a dog to do. Some of the somatovisceral diseases in animals that can really be helped with chiropractic are inflammatory bowel disease, kidney diseases, atopic dermatitis, which is basically psoriasis and skin diseases, allergies, pets that have allergies, food allergies. In large animals, lameness, gait abnormalities, lack of neck flexibility, and just poor performance. Hock disease, degenerative joint disease, diseases of the lower leg can really respond well with chiropractic. And with the somatovisceral stuff, colic, ulcers, allergies, hives, inflammation, head shaking, and one of the horses I was adjusting this fall coughed all the time, coughed a lot, and that cleared up just from adjusting it. That's one of the patients that Cindy sent me. In bulls, VOM adjusting has been known to increase semen production by 10 to 15%. So this is like money in the pocket of these owners, Now, We also use low-level laser on animals. They respond really, really well to laser. And like I was talking about this bull, or this steer that I adjusted the upper neck, and I now lasered it. Now, I don't know which one of those two did the most, but I just know that the animal was well the next day. So laser can really expand the whole healing process. Now, with laser, you have this interaction between the cells and the light. It's called a photochemical reaction, and it affects tissue at the cellular level. So low-level laser will enter the tissue. It'll enter the membrane, cell membrane permeability. It's absorbed in the mitochondria, which are the energy plants of the cells, and creates physiological changes in the cells. So a lot of people ask me, what exactly does laser do? So I'm going to show you what it does. Number one is accelerate cellular reproduction and growth. So why is that important? Well, if you have and I've seen this, like an erosion, like a wound that won't heal, okay, and you laser that will accelerate the production of cells so that wound can heal. Increased metabolic activity increases enzymes, oxygen, and blood to the area, reduces scar tissue formation, and actually helps with scar tissue if you have it. Increases the blood supply and circulation to that area. It stimulates nerve function and nerve connectivity to that area. It affects macrophages, which are part of the immune response to a disease and to infection. And it really affects nerve conduction rates and energy pathways throughout the body. So the main thing to remember is it increases the energy of the cells, and that produces healing. So the combined effects of VOM and laser are very powerful in taking care of an animal. So my thing is with animals, and same with people, is natural health care first, pharmaceutical second, and surgery last. And this technique, VOM, was developed by a veterinarian who was just frustrated with the fact that he wasn't helping a lot of the animals that he saw. So, Cindy, my office manager, brought her little dog tonight, Pixie, and I'm going to have Cindy get up and talk a little bit about the history of this dog and some of the things that she's been through with Pixie. And then I'm going to go ahead and adjust Pixie and show you how that works, okay? So,
Okay, Pixie.
floor's all yours.
Okay, ours. About 3 years ago, on a Saturday night, she was like falling over, vomiting, going in circles. It just like came out of nowhere. So, and I mentioned Saturday night because I had no choice but to take her into an emergency place. They ran a lot of tests on her and said, can't find anything, that'll be $500.
Wow.
Sent her home with 3 medications. It was a muscle relaxer, a pain pill, 100%. And about 2 weeks after that, so I brought her in here, and she never was 100%. They just said, what? And what did you find, Dr. Paul? Her atlas was completely down on her own.